Investors Live. And we do these every Monday, Wednesday, and on Fridays. And we try to cover a bunch of questions that everybody that's a part of the community sends these questions in, and we try to cover them. Sometimes we do stories, sometimes we do lessons learned. And so having said that, here we go. So for everybody that is not already aware, the 3-day event is coming up on the 16th, 17th, and 18th. So if you haven't registered, make sure you do get registered. Go to andrewholmesevents.com. That's andrewholmesevents.com, and you will be able to register. We're in the final 2 weeks. So once the seats are gone, they are completely gone. So just keep an eye for that. Having said that, okay, so the question number one we'll start with is an interesting question, which is so this is a person that says they are 42 years old. Their wife is 40. Both of them have good jobs, and both of them want to find out, what should they be doing? Should they be buying properties as a rental, or should they think about doing a couple of flips? They have a couple of people that they know that have done a couple of flips within Mastery, and these are not people that are from Mastery, but they want to find out what is the best option for them. So if you are somebody that already has a job, you have a job that you feel you make a good salary at, that's something that my first suggestion always is, number one, keep your job, right? For the next 2, 3, 4 years, plan on keeping your job. That's number one. So number two, what you have to think about is, why would you want to do a flip? If you did a flip and let's just say you made an extra 40, 50,000 bucks, is that going to change your lifestyle? If it's not going to change your lifestyle, if it's not necessarily that you don't have any outstanding debt, which doesn't seem like from what these people wrote, they don't have a lot of outstanding debt besides their home, it makes absolutely no sense for them to do a flip, right? That's not going to serve their kind of help them in the long run. And they have a property that they have under contract currently. And the numbers on that are that they're buying this particular property for 210,000 bucks. They're buying the property for 210. Probably from the address and from the info that they sent me, it's probably going to need about 45 to 50,000 in work. Even if it's 55, it doesn't matter. So they'll be in this particular property for about, say, 260, 265. The property will appraise out somewhere around 360 to 370, right? And this is a property which is relatively close, and it's in a relatively good area. So they should be able to get pretty strong rents in this particular area. So when I look at their particular situations, for them to go do a flip on the property, I don't believe is going to serve any purpose at all, except they're going to basically have a higher tax bill, because seems like that they don't have any debt. The only debt that they have is on their house, and they have a profile of both people with good jobs. So for them, it doesn't make sense to go and do a flip. For them, in this particular case, they should be only concentrating on building cash flow. So if they were in Mastery, if we were to sit down with them, when we would look at their profile, we would look at, okay, what is the goal? If the goal is to build a portfolio, which is what they have said that their goal is, then it absolutely makes no sense to do a flip. And even if you're going to make 50, 60,000 bucks, 70,000 bucks, this type of a property is not going to be an easy property to find. So this is a property I would not sell. This is a property I would keep, and I would just start stacking your portfolio on this property. Now, if you do have a property that is worth selling, that's different. This is not it. This is a good B, solid B, if not B plus area that they found a property in. So I would not be selling the property. So I would suggest you keep this particular property. And your first goal should be, how quickly can I get to about $5,000 in net cash flow income? This is kind of a very similar profile to if I look at, say, my sister and my sister's husband, right? So it's similar. My brother-in-law, my sister, similar sort of a situation where both of them have good jobs. They both of them happen to be physical therapists, and so for them to do a flip, it makes no sense because they already make good money. For them to go flip, they're just going to end up basically end up paying more taxes, and it just doesn't really do anything for them. Now, if somebody needs to do a flip, then you should do a flip. Otherwise, keep the property. Do not sell the property. So in this particular scenario, you should not be doing a a flip at all, because it will not serve any purpose. I know the $40,000, $50,000 may seem very attractive, but trust me, you will never, 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 ever regret keeping this particular property, and you're going to get very, very good rents in this particular area. So what I would do is this, that you're probably going to get about $3,200 or so in terms of rental income on this property. I would take $3,200. I would back out about $2,700 in terms of about $2,600 to $2,700. Even if you can put the debt where your payments are right at about $2,500, that's the maximum debt I would put on this property, because you do have the ability to keep the property. I would keep the property and keep about $500-700 cash flow in the property, and then just go and repeat this process over again. So please, for God's sake, do not sell this particular property. I think you have a fabulous property on your hands. So in this case, it does not make sense for you to do a flip. Now, there's a second question that came up, and which is a similar question. And in that particular case, they were asking a similar question, but the similar question was, should I flip it or should I wholesale it? So here's the scenario with the property. This is a 3-bedroom property, and it is a 2.5 bath, which is a great thing. The problem is that they're buying this particular property a little bit high in comparison to the ARV in this particular area. And their question is, should we flip the property or should we keep the property for a flip? Right? Should we wholesale, excuse me, or should we flip the property? So in this particular scenario, their back end value on this property is $400,000, and I'm not going to mention what they bought this particular property for, because they do not want me to mention that. So I'm just going to obviously honor their wishes. But in this particular scenario, when I look at the numbers, I think your numbers are tight. So I know you have somebody who's interested in the property, and you can make $25,000 on a wholesale. I would wholesale this property all day long, because the rehab in this property is going to be terrible. It is going to be terrible. Listen to me loud and clear. So I would not. You're paying a little bit more than I would be comfortable with at all, right? If this was somebody from Mastery, we would tell them, absolutely do not do this property. So my suggestion to you is, do not do this particular rehab. Just go ahead and dump the property, because you're able to do a wholesale with it, and whoever else wants to buy it, you'll be much, much better off. So please do not take on this rehab. Go ahead and dump this particular property. Because given the scenario and given where this property is located, you're going to end up having to do a really monstrous rehab on this property, and there's no margin that you're going to have left with it. So you can make good money right now doing a wholesale. So I would go ahead and do the wholesale on it, and then just be done with it. The next question was, if I have good capital and good credit, how do I find off-market properties? So if you're looking for off-market properties, there are a few different options to find off-market properties. Number one is make sure you're on the list for all the wholesalers in the Chicagoland area, right? So if you come to the RIA meetings, talk to people who are at the RIA meetings. If you go to the meeting, that's the wholesale meeting with Blake in the city, make sure you get on Blake's list. Make sure you're on the other people's list. So go to Facebook and find the wholesalers in the Chicagoland area and get on everybody's list. And you got to network. That's step one. Step two is I would look at online auctions as another way of potentially finding off-market properties that are not listed in the MLS. And then step 3 would be is, are you willing to do some off-market marketing? Like, are you willing to do some sort of a little bit of a mailing? Are you willing to do a little bit of cold calling? Are you willing to do some sort of a, some sort of basically outbound marketing? Obviously, mailing and cold calling being the easiest ones. Cold calling obviously is going to take you a little bit more time, but you're going to have to do one of the two, right? Unless you know how to go to auctions, meaning the Cook County auctions, DuPage auctions, and or Will County, depending on what county you're in, unless you know how to go there. But that is not something I would do. I would not do that because that is the most dangerous place for you to buy property. So number 1, I would look at wholesalers. Number 2, I would look at online auctions. And then number 3, I would look at either doing some sort of a small mailing list, or I would look at and basically just do a mailing list in areas you intend to buy. So take 5 of those areas and then put together a list. And you don't have to do more than $500 a month in mailings, right? You can basically have a small budget. And I promise you, if you consistently do that 4 or 5 months, you will find properties, but you have to be consistent with it. Or if you're going to do calling, that's fine also. So you download the list. Once you've downloaded the list, then you identify what is the highest likelihood of somebody wanting to sell. Where's the urgency factor? We identify it by high equity. We identify it by if they show up on 2 different lists. So if they're showing up on 2 different distress lists, that we put as a highly qualified person. If it's going to an auction, that we put as a highly qualified person, because they have an urgency to do something. So if you narrow it down, basically, then you do a skip trace, and then you call those people, or then you mail them. Generally, if the time is less, then you're going to have to call them or reach out to them, or go and basically just door knock. That's another possibility for you also. So that's what I would look at if I was you. How do I connect with other wholesalers and students in Mastery? So if you want to connect with students in Mastery, show up at the 3-day, right? That's the best place. There'll be a ton of them. Hundreds of them are there throughout the 3 days. Network with everybody, shake everybody's hand, go to the VIP lunch, right? And get to network with everybody. You'll meet a ton of people, and then make sure you show up at the meetings that happen at the office. Talk to a bunch of people. There's a ton of people from Mastery that show up, and you can get to know them. You can get to meet them, as well as if you want to get on the wholesalers lists, just go on Facebook, right? And join all these wholesaler groups. There's a ton of wholesalers that are out there. They don't all have good deals, obviously, but there's a lot of them out there. And from time to time, you will find good deals if you network. It's 100% all about networking if you truly want to, truly want to meet people. So make sure you go on, and it's simple. Go on Facebook and join all the different groups that are local, and just say, hey, these are the areas I'm looking for a property. I have funds ready to go, so on and so forth. When are we going to do a segment on Section 8 on BRRRR? I think that is a recording. Actually, we will do one with a lady that we had done for Mastery, and we will have her, and we'll do a RIA meeting with her, because I think there's a lot of people that are doing Section 8 rentals, and this lady was really, really good. She had phenomenal information. Everybody from Mastery enjoyed it. So we will do that for the RIA meeting. Actually, let me make that as a note, Section 8, because I think that will make for a great topic. So in the next few weeks, probably it's not going to happen until the 3-day, because 3 days and 2 weeks. Right after the 3-day, we will schedule that. I will tell Lori to schedule that, and we will do that. So please watch out for that. What are some ways that you can come up with and get your first investment property? This is something that question is coming up a lot, that what is the first way of getting an investment property? I'm not sure if you're talking about finding an investment property or if you're talking about funding an investment property. So generally, to find your investment property, guys, still today, even in today's market, if you look at the amount of properties that if I buy, people from Mastery buy, we obviously buy from wholesalers, we obviously buy from direct marketing, that we do some of that, but a lot of the properties still are being found in the multiple listing service. I know a lot of times people have a hard time believing this, but just today I put in 2 more offers on properties that are MLS properties. So they are available. The question is, are you looking, right? Are you consistently looking on the multiple listing service? And do you know specifically what you are looking for? The other thing is online auctions. Please don't ignore those. There are some good quality properties that are available over there. I just closed on another one just literally on Friday, that I closed on a property that is another property that is from online auctions. So that's another way of finding a property. And so the other part is that, are you doing any sort of outbound marketing? This is something that a lot of times people are not doing. And in today's market, if you truly want to find properties, right, that is something that you should look at, because that is another market segment that is being ignored by most people. Most people don't do any outbound marketing. Like I've said many, many times, set up a very small budget. You don't have to have a large budget, but do it consistently and come up with one list you're going to target. If you're going to go after people who are absentee owners, then just focus on the absentee owners. Right? If you're going to go after people that are people who recently died, or probates, or people who are going to auction, or people who are pre-foreclosures, really doesn't matter what list you pick. Pick one list and then stick to it, but do it consistently. And even if your budget is only $200 a month, right? Just stick to it consistently, but please don't go and spend $2,000 in one shot and then not do it again. Right? The consistency is the name of the game. So this is something that you have to think about. We are going back to mailings because that was something that has worked traditionally for me. And we're trying to basically put a system in place so we do it consistently all the time. And we're going to sub that out to a third party because we just don't have that time in-house. And the one thing I would look at is that whatever list you pick, just make sure you consistently market to that list, and all the ones that are non-deliverables. So let's just say you do a mailing of 200 postcards, and then you get, say, 25 of them back. When you get 25 of them back, they were not delivered. Don't just throw them in the garbage. Take those and then do a reverse search on them, basically, and then call those people. Ideally, the ideal way to do it is you drop something in the mail, then you call. You drop something in the mail, then you call. I think you are going to have a better luck with that if you do follow it up with the text also, which is you drop, you call, you text. You drop, you call, you text. If you do that sort of a rhythm, I think you're going to have a much better success. Now, with texting, I want to just warn you, please do not start doing blanket texting, because there are some FTC rules with that. So please make sure you follow the rules. Don't just start basically doing junk text to people. That is something that is frowned upon, and there are FTC rules that you must follow. So don't just basically just start doing at random text. But what I have seen, this is just for me, for the mailings, generally we have had literally a 20x or a 30x return on the money, hands down. Right? It doesn't happen month one, that if you do a mailing today, it's probably you're not going to find a deal in month one or month two. Generally, it takes 2-3 months for it to roll in, but literally one deal, right, will pay for 6, 7, 8 months worth of mailings. So if you just kind of do even a small deal, will pay for that. And I promise you that. The next question was, well, how do I identify a good investment property? This is a very broad question. What you have to think about is, okay, what is a good investment property to you? That's the first thing you have to think about. So the first thing you have to think about is, what is a location that you want to be in? Because is that a location you're willing to invest in? I tend to like A, B, and C locations. I'm not going to go to a D location. Generally, my preference is A and B, or C plus locations, right? Generally, a C minus location, I'm not going to invest in. Now, there's a lot of other people that will buy a C minus location and they cash flow like no tomorrow, or they flip like no tomorrow, so that's fine. So the first thing you have to look at is, what is a good investment property? So the first thing I would look at is, number one, I would look at, okay, what is the location that you want, right? So the first place I would start with is within a 30 to 45-minute radius of your particular residence, depending on where you live. Now, if you live in a very, very, very expensive area, you're probably going to have a hard time unless you have a ton of money to find a property in that particular area. But otherwise, you have to think about what is a good location that you want to go to. So you have to kind of identify what that area is. And generally, we like to identify at least 5 areas that are in a surrounding about 35 to 40-minute radius, generally, right? That's number one. Number two, what you have to think about is, okay, what is a good property for you? So generally, a good property would be defined any property that you can buy that has about 25% equity after rehab. So what does that mean? What that means is that, let's say my rehab is done in the property. So if my rehab is done and I'm invested $250,000 in the property and I have 25 to 30% margin on it, right? That the property's worth that much more, generally that's going to end up being a good quality investment property. And what you have to think about is, hey, am I going to flip this property? Am I going to rent this property? Am I going to do a midterm rental, right? You have to think about it from that perspective. Now, some person might say, Andrew, as long as I can wholesale the property, it's a good investment property to me. Nothing wrong with that at all, right? Nothing wrong with that. But then what you have to understand is that, is there enough margin on that particular property? So generally, the rule of thumb that we use is, anytime you're looking at a property, look at the property and understand what is the back end value, meaning after repair value of that property. So let's say if the after repair value of that property is $300,000, then you're going to take that $300,000 number, you're going to take 70% of that number, which is going to be $210,000, and then you're going to subtract approximately about whatever it's going to cost you to fix the property. So let's say it's going to cost you $50,000 to fix the property. So $300,000 times 70%, that's going to put you at $210,000 minus $50,000. So that puts you at $160,000. So you can pay $160,000 for that property. Now, if you're going to be doing a wholesale, right, you need to buy the property somewhere around 160 or lower. Today, the market is very, very strong. So there's a lot of people that will buy the property from you for probably even 170, if not 180, because they're going to be over optimistic and they're going to buy the property from you. I just have a property that I just got under contract, which I feel the back end number on the property is about $350,000. And so if I do the numbers backwards, I take 70% of that number minus the rehab. Now, when I made an offer on that property, I got the property under contract, but the problem is I'm not happy with the number that I have it under contract for, right? I feel I need to get it under contract for a lower number, another 25,000 or so, for me to have a big enough margin to do a flip. So what am I doing in that case? I'm just basically putting the property right back on the market and just moving the property as a wholesale. And there are plenty of people that are willing to pay 25 to 30,000 more than I have the property under contract for. I think that number is crazy, but they're happy with it. So as long as they're happy with it, and as long as I can make a $25,000 to $30,000 profit, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to give it to anybody in Mastery because I don't think they'll have enough margin there to really make a profit. But outside of Mastery, anybody wants to buy it, God bless, right? From my end, I don't mind somebody buying the property, but for me, it's still a good investment property, meaning I can just do a quick turn on it. So the biggest issue, what you have to think about is, what is a good investment for you? That is something that you have to define. For me, if I'm buying a property for cash flow, I want to have at least $500 in cash flow, meaning between the rent I can get versus principal, interest, taxes, insurance, I want to have a minimum of $500 delta, right? That's a good investment property. I want to have a minimum of 25 to 30% equity in the property. That's a good investment property. And my DCR numbers have to hit. So I need those 3 things. If it's a flip, then I need to make sure that whatever I'm going to sell the property for. So if I'm selling the property for 400,000, I want to make in 6 months about 20% return. So that's $80,000 in profit, 20%, or the greater of the two, which is that if I'm doing a rehab in the property, let's say it's a $70,000 rehab. So what is greater of the two? The greater of the two is 80,000. So that's what I want to make. So that for me is a definition of a good flip. On the other hand, if it doesn't make sense for a flip for me, doesn't make sense for me to keep the property, then can I do a wholesale? If I can do a wholesale, make a good profit, it's still okay, right? But that's what you have to define for you. What is a good investment property for you? If you just follow a simple rule of thumb, which is take the back end value of property, back end ARV of a property, 400,000 is the back end ARV, take 70% of that, 280, subtract your rehab cost out of it. If that's 50,000, then you're paying 230 for the property. If you pay 220, 230 for the property, you should be able to even wholesale the property and you'll realize a nice little profit on it. And it's a good property for you if that's what you want. Generally, I don't want to do wholesales. I have no interest in doing wholesales, not because I don't like the money. It's just because nowadays that is not the focus for me as a business. My first preference is to keep the property. If I can't keep it and it just doesn't make sense numbers wise, if I can flip it out, get a nice chunk of profit out of it, fantastic. Otherwise, we can always wholesale the property. So what you have to look at is, what is your definition of a good investment property? And the key thing is, what you have to look at is that what is the location? Number two, do you know what a good investment property in that location looks like, right? Do you know what that number is? Like today, there's a property that I submitted an offer on it at 315. So because I think the back end value on that property is going to be close to about 560 or so. So 315, I had no problem basically paying for that particular property because I feel the back end value is about 550, right? There's a lot of, the property was listed for a lot less than what I was willing to pay. And at 315, I'm getting that property. Now, other people, there were multiple offers on it, and maybe they did go up to that number, didn't go up to that number. I have no idea. But for me at 315, it was a nice strong offer that I'm putting up $25,000 non-refundable upfront to be able to buy that property. And I'm happy with it because I feel that the back end number at 550 justifies me paying 315 because I'm paying 315. I'm going to probably do about 50 to 55,000 in work in the property. So I come up to somewhere around about 365 or so, 370. And I feel very, very, very good at a 550 back end. So it gives me plenty of margin. Even with carrying costs, sales cost, everything, it gives me a good $100,000 in profit in that particular transaction. So I feel very happy with it. Now, I don't know why other people didn't come up. Maybe they did have other offers, but maybe their offer wasn't as strong as mine was, because when I made the offer, I made it with 25,000 non-refundable earnest money that I was willing to put up, and I waived any and all inspections. The only thing I didn't waive was attorney approval, but everything else I waived. Now, I'm not saying you should do that unless you know what you're doing, but for me, that was an acceptable amount of risk because I feel that I know the property and it has some issues with it that are not that difficult for me to address, but they may be rather expensive items for other people to deal with. Like there's an issue with the sewer pipe. The sewer pipe has collapsed, which is coming into the property. That is something that I can get done, and I'm not scared of that type of problem. There is a problem with the lead line also that's coming into the property. So both the sewer pipe is going to have to be repaired and the lead line is going to have to be replaced because of the requirements that there are, because it's damaged. So there's no way of fixing a lead line that is broken. That's going to have to be, the whole thing is going to have to be replaced. So that is what it is. So that's what you have to look at, is that what is a good investment for you? I gave you my criterias for a flip or for a rental, and they're not that different for an Airbnb or a midterm. They're very similar to a rental property, because a rental property is going to be a pivot property. It can be rented, it can be flipped, it can be midterm, it can be short term, any of those criteria. So those are mine. What are yours? So having said that, please keep the questions coming in. Again, the question number 2 was from this couple. I don't know what their name is, but they had that property that I had suggested to them, is that please do not try to flip that property, just wholesale the property. Do not try to flip it, because you're going to get yourself in a lot of hot water. And the first question was from the couple that had the question of flipping it versus keeping it. My suggestion is, given your scenario, from what I see, I would keep that particular property. I would not absolutely sell that property, especially given your scenario. So please keep the questions coming. Again, if you haven't registered for the 3-day, make sure that you do. If you're somebody from Mastery that's listening to it, make sure you get your referral link and send it to your friends, family. The 3-day is fast approaching, and super thrilled. We look forward to seeing you at the 3-day. If you haven't registered, make sure you do. It's the 16th, 17th, and 18th of February. So it's andrewholmesevents.com. Thanks a bunch, guys, and we